You wanted top 36 Dynasty rookie rankings? You've got them. We've got landing spots. We've got draft capital. Hayden, we've even got breakout age to talk through all of these rookies and how the people are selecting them. I can't wait to do this. This is from my brain. And boy, do they break consensus. That's what we're here to do today.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah, we got to break consensus when we can. And you went through all the press conferences. Just really quick, just for Underdog, we have some news. $21 million in best ball tournaments. So I know you Dynasty sickos, if you want some other ways to draft, you can get on the Underdog app. We have a deposit link for you guys to use our promo code the show. $21 million in tournaments right now already.
Yeah, it's not just Best Ball Mania that opened. I believe something like 10 other tournaments did at the exact same time.
we have an eliminator contest where it's literally head to head all the way till the finals, which is super fun. So that's a new contest wrinkle for us. And yeah, really excited about it all.
The rest of this week will be devoted to season-long fantasy football rings. But again, I wanted to get this out for you Dynasty sickos that might have your rookie rankings and rookie drafts coming up here. It's not just 1 through 12. I tried to tier these out as much as possible. And as Hayden mentioned, I went through all of the press conferences with the general manager, the head coaches, sometimes scouts and positional coaches of what they said about these skill players. So I'm going to try to impart some of that onto you. And we'll even have some clips as we go along, just, for receipt purposes. All right. Let's kick things off. The 101 is very easy. That is Ashton Jeanty, the Las Vegas Raiders. To us, what stood out was his run stamina. So we know he's going to own this backfield. Chip Kelly was anywhere from 4th to about 9th in carries per game of his backfields, even when his offenses range from like the second most scored to the 27th most scored in the NFL. So he's going to run the football. This is going to be a foundation element of this team with Geno Smith, Brock Bowers, Jacoby Myers, and even Jack Besh, who we'll talk about a little bit later on. So Ashton Jeanty should be up there among the league leaders in carries in his rookie season.
Their win total's at 7, so it's a little bit better than some of the other running back landing spots that we've gotten to. And then I think Geno Smith's going to be there for probably 2 or 3 years, most likely. I would say Pete Carroll, the same thing. I think that would also mean Chip Kelly. So I think those 3 it's a good landing spot for Ashton Jeanty, just given the history of how much volume he's going to get.
Yeah, and I'm kind of looking this in a 3-year window, and it can definitely last for more with a whole bunch of these names, but that's how I like to look at Dynasty stuff. And just to outline what the scoring is for this, the Dynasty League that I care about the most, that has some of your favorite analysts in it, whether it be JJ Zacharyson or Trevor Sikkema, Connor Rogers, Field Yates is in there, Ben Solak. I've won it the last 2 years, humble brag. That is Superflex, half PPR. So that is what these rankings are going to be, the Superflex, half PPR. And so, not IDP, but that brings us to our next name, who I think should absolutely be the 102, no question about it. And that's Travis Hunter of the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a lot to unpack here. And I think there's so much fear out there about selecting Travis Hunter with your second overall pick in rookie drafts. And the first is for cornerback snaps that people believe he is going to be activated for this year. Again, listening to this team, it seems like their plan is that the cornerback snaps will not take away from wide receiver snaps, that they're just almost additional on top of what he was drafted to do, which was score touchdowns for this offense, make it a dynamic duo with Brian Thomas Jr. And speaking of that, we get so focused on how great Brian Thomas Jr. was last year, and he was exceptional. But Hayden, we know that wide receiver pairings in the league can score a whole bunch of points. Like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last year, both of those guys finished as top 9 scorers at the wide receiver spot. We also saw that the Cincinnati Bengals had 2 top 4 scoring wide receivers last year. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, both top 17. We can go to Amon-Ra St. Brown and Jameson Williams, both top 20. This is not new for a Liam Cohen offense to have 2 huge pass catchers that he will get the rock to.
Yeah, I think he's going to play wide receiver first, like they've said. I mean, you just don't mortgage your future for a corner. You do that for somebody that's going to play a little bit on both sides. And for Travis Hunter, I think like the underrated thing that's going to be perfect for Liam Cohen is the screen game. Like Travis Hunter is like one of the best screen wide receivers I've ever seen. And Liam Cohen last year, I would say might be the best screen caller. You saw that from the backs. You saw that from even their tight ends and the receivers. He's going to be the screen guy at least to start. And I think that as his route running improves, we'll see him get better and better and better. I'm coming at this a little bit from just like my season-long rankings for best ball this year, and I already have him 37th overall. I think that he's going to be a legit fantasy wide receiver right away, and I think that his upside is like amongst the best wide receivers in all of football.
The entire press conference was about him fitting on offense. It, again, is to score points, and so the defense can't tilt in one direction or the other.
It's a little bit more than a we'll see, but we do have to be fluid throughout, right? We'll have a plan right now of, primarily on offense with learning the defensive system and practicing on the defensive side of the ball as well throughout this offseason program. And then as we continue to grow, we have to be fluid throughout this whole process.
They talked about how he fit in the wide receiver room. They didn't talk about how he fits in the cornerback room. These are just simple little things that you can pluck out. And even going back to Liam Cohen when he was with the Los Angeles Rams, like that was a part of a pass catching group that had multiple wide receivers. Puka Nacua wasn't there yet, but Cooper Kupp had just come off what I think a Triple Crown winning season. And then they went and paid Allen Robinson a boatload of money, $15.5 million. It didn't work out, but they've always wanted two stellar wide receivers in an offense like this. Now, there's also another fear that people are bringing up in my mentions on top of this, Hayden. It's a fear of Trevor Lawrence. And to me, this is such a different situation for Trevor compared to the Urban Meyer days and the Doug Peterson days. Like, they want this player in Travis Hunter to not just break the fabric of this team, but to break the fabric of the sport entirely. And think of Trevor with now offensive line investment, and now when he's healthy, two pass catchers like this and a Liam Cohen offense, which many people like me previously had questions about Baker Mayfield to the same degree. I think Trevor is a far more talented player than Baker Mayfield, and I can't wait to see him in an infrastructure like that.
Yeah, this will be his best season of his career, and it should be. He's just got better wide receiver talent, not just with Travis Hunter, but like Brian Thomas going into that second season, and also the best play caller that he's dealt with. Like we think really, really highly of Liam Cohen. So this should be like a decent enough offensive line. It's not fantastic, but it's decent enough. Yeah, Trevor's going to be just fine.
And once again, I will shout out the NFL season pick'ems over on Underdog. You can take the higher lower on Travis Hunter right now. It's at 749.5 receiving yards. I know which direction I'll take the higher on that one. So again, if you are in states like Missouri, Georgia, Texas, California, use promo code the show, click the link in the description down below. And there's a whole bunch of them on names we're going to talk about: Ashton Genty, Omarion Hampton, so on and so forth. So go and play on the Dog app, not just drafting, pick them at the same time. That's a tier break for me. Let's go to the early part of round 103, Omarion Hampton, running back for the Chargers. This team was unanimous in loving Omarion Hampton, and at the end of their draft meetings said that if he's on the board, we are going to select him. And it wasn't just for like his pure running style, Hayden. Harbaugh kept bringing up his passing game ability and that he gives us a weapon out of the backfield. Caught something like 39 receptions last year, if I'm not mistaken, can play on all three downs very well. Granted, they said they view both he and Najee Harris as starters, but we know what this commitment is. It's not just a lead ball carrier in the second round. It's a lead ball carrier in the first round. And this team wants to score touchdowns, and Omarion Hampton is probably their best pathway of doing that on the ground.
I know we always think about this with the lens of Justin Herbert. This is also Greg Roman. And even last year when the running backs were banged up and not performing well, they were 12th in rush attempts, and that team wasn't even like really good. So if this team does get improved, we can see them be top 10 in rush attempts. And long term, even if Najee Harris is a little bit of a thorn this year, which I don't even think is going to be the truth by the end of the season, long term, they have both tackles. They have Justin Herbert, Ladd McConkey, Harbaugh. This is just going to be a well-run organization moving forward. And Omarion Hampton has like bell cow traits all the way through: size, pass catching, downhill rushing style. So I just would be stunned if this fails at all. Like long term, this is going to be awesome. And I think maybe Najee like starts off the season in September in like a committee, but by the end of the year, when push comes to shove, this is going to be Hampton's.
This is one of those through week 6. It might be a split backfield, but as we go along, we know which direction this is headed to. And over the next 3 years, we know what this direction is headed to. Mike Clay already puts out early 2025 projections. He has Omarion Hampton at 190 carries, 834 yards, 8 touchdowns, just 35 receptions, 256 yards, and 1 score. That's in a 14-game sample because he always takes away 3 from the running back position. Next, Cam Ward, quarterback, Tennessee Titans, as the 104. This is pretty simple. And we have the passing element to this, and sure, it's just Calvin Ridley and a whole bunch of other players. Tyler Lockett, you can add on to that. But what I love the most is that the infrastructure, the environment is there to succeed in terms of this offensive line. Like the last 2 number 1 picks that we have seen in the NFL have gone to shit situations in terms of the offensive line, and it derailed their rookie season. That should not happen here with Cam Ward, with really top investments over the last 3 years and 3 off seasons to this group. So that, again, should give him a platform to have success. And I hope that Brian Callahan even gives and invigorates him to like scramble a bit more forward rather than almost retreating out of the pocket a bit too often.
Very little rushing numbers in college, but it was more athletic than those numbers would suggest. So yeah, I'm hoping that's what we get in the pros here. The Titans offensive line is decent enough. I am a little bit worried about the coaching staff and the skill group. I think those two things are pretty negative for Cam Ward here, but he just has like top 12 arm talent, just like arm angles, throwing out of structure, throwing inside structure. So there's some things to improve on. He's not like this absolute layup line first overall quarterback selection, but I do think that he can get into that Kyler Murray, Jordan Love, Dak Prescott tier eventually. I think this thing might take a couple years to fully kind of hit its stride, but Cam Ward seems like the total man, and I do agree that he should be in this tier.
Yeah, this is super flex once again. If you're not in super flex, later on in round one is where I would take him. But a starting quarterback that you're immediately going to get should land here in your dynasty rankings. Okay, to close out this tier, Tetaroa McMillan, T-Mac with the Carolina Panthers. What else is there to say? The number one thing that Dave Canales brought up is that he's going to give us like a red zone weapon, a go up and get it type of dude. This team was already 9th in red zone touchdown success rate last year. This is going to be a huge addition, and there are plenty of plays on third downs, on 20-plus yard passes last year where like the likes of David Moore and Xavier Leggett let down Bryce Young. Hopefully Tetaroa McMillan is going to convert those plays, and those are chunk gains. This is a downfield passing attack, and that certainly fits into the threat that T-Mac brings. And one thing I failed to mention previously is how much better Hayden he improved in terms of his yards after catch capabilities, how he jumped from like 15 forced missed tackles to about 39, I believe it was this past season. That is a crazy, crazy number and fantastic stuff. I'll go back and make sure I wasn't hyperbolic with that stuff.
Well, I mean, I definitely noticed a lot of yards after the catch production this last year. That's where I think the Drake London comparison is actually pretty spot on to me. And I think that he just kind of meshes well for Bryce Young. I think Bryce's best throws are in that 5 to 20 range, and that's where Tet is going to make a lot of his hay. And then the other thing to note here, they've already invested in with Leggett in the wide receiver room, so I'm not expecting the Panthers like invest in another receiver the next couple of years. And I think that Canales and Bryce are going to be there for the long run. So as long as McMillan is like as good as we think he is, and I feel pretty good about that, he should be like the clear-cut top guy in this offense for a while.
Yeah, if everything pans out, it's T-Mac, Xavier Leggett, and Jalen Coker in 2026 and beyond. I was slightly hyperbolic. He forced 13 missed tackles in 2023, and this past year, 29. And also, when you see those forced missed tackles, those long plays where he shocks defenders with his yards after catch and speed down the field, too. So I'm in on T-Mac in this offense. Okay, that's a tier break. Rest of round one, a bit of a pivot for me. Trevion Henderson, my guy here, New England Patriots second round pick. To me, this is like a perfect pathway to around 12 touches per game during his rookie season, and then maybe up to 14 to 16 and even more than that moving forward. And it's not a normal, 16 touches that he would get, that other running backs would get. To me, this is one passing down stuff because he's instantly their best pass protector. And Chris Ballard, a general manager of a rival team, called him the best pass protecting back he's seen enter college in quite some time. But then two, it's also the explosives that he brings. So it's not like I'm getting, 16 carries, averaging 3.9 yards per clip. These are going to equal 20, 30, 40, maybe one per game, maybe two per game. And I just think that Josh McDaniels and Mike Vrabel are a new set of eyes on this. And if they wanted someone like Trevion Henderson on the roster, they're going to get Trevion Henderson the football.
Yeah, if there wasn't a guard that they felt comfortable with drafting in the second round, you just go get the pass protector in round two. I think like the only flaws I'll point out with Trevion Henderson is just he was like always in a split backfield, and like that's what we were kind of expecting here. So that makes him a little bit tough this early for me. The Ramondre Stevenson stuff, he's under contract. He got $17 million guaranteed. That's probably going to be this year and maybe next year only. I think long term it's going to be Trevion and to see how much he can handle work wise, just because he's always been in a committee. And I do understand that for him. He's just a little bit smaller back, but he's going to get a lot of the high value touches. Like every single touch he gets is going to be that of a high value touch. It just comes down to, is he going to get enough goal line opportunities with Ramondre Stevenson, probably having 30 pounds on him. But the good news is you're signing up with the Patriots, who we thought crushed the draft. Drake May is ascending. We like Josh McDaniels and Vrabel in general. So I think this is like pretty appropriate for him. I just think it's a little bit harder for me to envision like this like top 5, top 10 fantasy running back. That's okay.
He did own the backfield when CJ Stroud was there during his rookie season, his freshman season. Like he had 183 carries that year. The next closest was 71. And then he also had 27 receptions that year. Now he did get injured kind of the next 2 seasons. So maybe that's on their mind, but they did call him a 3-down back. I totally believe it. I totally buy it. I think he has a bit more power to his game than other people do, willingness to take on some defenders. So I just think like where this offense, and we'll get to in a bit with the wide receiver that they selected, where this offense lacked in explosives last year, it was basically Drake May throwing the football downfield to Kayshon Boutte. They now brought in 2 pass catchers, or 2 players, I should say, that generate explosives. And that's going to be a calling card of theirs in these 2 guys. His former teammate, Quinshon Judkins, is here as my 7th, 107. Yeah, I mean, he goes to a team that doesn't have a starting running back on it. It's pretty cut and dry here.
Yeah.
The Cleveland Browns offense might not be in a wonderful situation in 2025. I thought they'd add more offensive linemen than they did. They didn't add another wide receiver either. They took 2 running backs, but it's very clear, and they even said this, that just like they weren't expecting to draft 2 quarterbacks, they weren't expecting to draft 2 running backs heading into this one. So they clearly view Quinshon Judkins as a 3-down player. He was that at Ole Miss and then turned into this Dave Montgomery with Jahmyr Gibbs version of Travion Henderson this past year at Ohio State. And I just like Quinshon Judkins more than a lot of people in the draft community.
Yeah, with these last 2 guys, they go 36th and 38th overall. Like every single running back that gets early round 2 draft capital, we should be excited about. With Quinshon Judkins, he has more size to like turn into a bell cow, but he did not do that at Ohio State because he was splitting the workload with Travion. It sounds like they're going to have Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford kind of work as like the pass game complements to Quinshon Judkins. He's going to be the early down hammer. He's very likely to be the goal line back for the next couple of years. The thing that we have to kind of sort through with Quinshon is what the hell the Browns are over the next couple years. Like their win total right now is at 5.5. It's one of the lowest in the NFL, if not the actual lowest. We don't know who the starting quarterback is going to be for the next couple seasons. So like if you are going to be the early down hammer and seeding work in pass games, you better score some touchdowns, and the Browns may not score a bunch of them. But I think the upside case would be, you never know if that gets fixed. And then the other thing would be, I have seen him catch some passes at Ole Miss. He has been more of a bell cow back, and maybe he just kind of like earns like full bell cow work share in the NFL. So I think this is about the right range for him.
So it kind of gets interesting here in terms of wide receivers, because the next 3 names are going to loaded wide receiver rooms. And so it can be difficult to kind of parse through those and to figure out which one and where you're going to rank them. For me, I still feel comfortable with Emeka Egbuka being in this slot. And one, that's from an evaluation standpoint. 2, that's from an offensive environment standpoint. And 3, he's also going to a team that does honestly have aging wide receivers, albeit they're awesome where they can play. Obviously, we know Mike Evans is going to be a pillar on the outside. Chris Godwin is mostly going to live inside, but can have outside versatility. And Egbuka can have outside player who also has inside versatility on top of this. So to me, this punts Jalen McMillan to the bench. That's exactly what first-round draft capital does immediately. Yep. And on top of that, if one of those guys go down, then you have 2 wide receiver set player in Emeka Egbuka in a really, really good environment.
I believe they said like they were just not going to pass on him. He's just like too good of a dude. They know exactly what they're signing up for. And I totally understand that in this draft class. It was not about Chris Godwin's injury history, but I'm going to say that it is. Whatever they say, like you can't tell me that like coming off of a dislocated ankle and a torn ACL, and then Mike Evans is in his 30s. So he's got I think the long-term pathway is very clear for Emeka Egbuka. The short term's a little bit more interesting just because they lost Liam Cohen. They have all these other guys we're talking about. So I just really like the player. And I think long-term, he's going to end up panning out just fine.
And look, if you are a true contender and do not want to wait, 1, I would suggest you do wait on someone like Emeka Egbuka. But 2, there are some running backs we're going to talk about here in the next, 3 to 5 picks. But if you need someone to win in 2025 and your rest of your roster is stacked, then you might be able to pivot in that situation. I'm not saying go buy these rankings every single time. I'm trying to add some flavor and color here. And one of those guys is right now, because Hayden knows this, you all know this, I'm a massive RJ Harvey fan. And yeah, I was not expecting to have day 2 draft capital, but Sean Payton did me a favor, did the world a favor, and gave RJ Harvey 2nd round draft capital. And here he is as the 109 for me. Our buddy Ryan Heath pointed out, Sean Payton has only drafted 4 running backs before day 3 as a head coach. Reggie Bush went 2nd overall. Mark Ingram 28th overall, Alvin Kamara 67th overall, RJ Harvey 60th overall. And look, I love his explosive big play potential. I liked his vision. He was the entire UCF offense. But let's not forget Denver's offense this past season in terms of the passing game element and how good that was with Sean Payton scheming things up. But their backfield was arguably the least talented in the NFL, or one of them, and they still ranked 4th in running back targets. Javonte Williams was 5th in running back targets by himself with 70. And Sean Payton went through his 2+ hours of watching RJ Harvey and then went on a loop of just watching his passing game work and focused on it during his pro day and believes and hyped up his skill set there. So as much as Sean Payton wants to hype up RJ Harvey, I'm right there with him.
Where we fall in love with somebody, and you really try to just go through each one with an open mind. And I can remember the afternoon. I can't remember what afternoon, but I can remember the 2 hours on this player. And then it was like, all right, be quiet.
Yeah, I think that he's more of the Joker answer than Evan Ingram is. And this is a team with a 9.5 win total. You already talked about the production in particular with Harvey, the history of Sean Payton, and he plays his guys. When he has his eyes out on these guys are getting on the field. So yeah, I feel really good about RJ Harvey moving forward here. The only risk in the profile, just 24-year-old rookie, 10th percentile weight. But Sean Payton's also like gotten the most out of smaller backs, like maybe like the best coach of all time, figuring out how to use these small backs. And I think RJ Harvey will be next in line.
I mean, shit, we can go through the list of Darren Sproles to Pierre Thomas. You know, he's nearly the same size as Reggie Bush in terms of weight, you know? So like all these guys are getting work. Alvin Kamara was like that too. I'm excited. I'm really, really excited for RJ Harvey. Again, the most important thing is if Sean Payton believes in you, you aren't coming off the field. You know, like this is why Devon Vele was a 7th round, 26-year-old rookie and got all the snaps that he did, because he became Sean Payton's guy. And we've seen that all the way from Marcus Colston to Michael Thomas too.
And then on the flip side, Audric Estime was so not Sean Payton's guy that he was literally a healthy scratch in like the most important games.
This grouping, again, I want you to use your thinking hat with your own roster. Be a bit variable, flexible with all of it. So if you need a tight end, this is where I'm going to rate Colston Loveland as the 110. And this is going to be well ahead, spoiler alert, ahead of Tyler Warren. And that's, again, just my personal evaluation standpoint. I know their first round draft capital is very similar, but it's also to the offense that he landed in. Like we saw Ben Johnson coach the tight end 1 in fantasy football just 2 seasons ago. And that dude was a rookie, and then instantly get to the podium and say, oh yeah, I'm going to do Sam Laporta things with Colston Loveland. And so I know that Cole Kmet's there. I know that he has gotten a second contract, but that's not Ben Johnson. Ben Johnson wants pass catchers. He wants movable pieces. We have seen literally Colston Loveland split out as an X wide receiver and then move internally and be attached to the formation. So they have tons of pass catchers. We'll talk about another one here in a moment, but just from like a long-term standpoint, Colston Loveland absolutely has the talent to be a top 5 scorer in fantasy football.
Completely agree. I think his ceiling is like at an all-pro level. His route running for his size I thought was incredible. I think he's a tier above Sam Laporta. And so obviously you love that Ben Johnson's talking about how he's going to utilize him. I think he's going to be out there and be a fantasy contributor right away, which is pretty hard for a rookie to do. But I think he can play inline, and I think people are underestimating his blocking skills. And then on top of that, it's not just Ben Johnson. It's Caleb Williams going into his second year. It's a brand new offensive line. They even added a depth piece on the offensive line as well. And I think that we'll get to Luther Burden in a second. I think Luther Burden is going to be like a more of a part-time player to manufacture some touches too. If like Colston Loveland's as good as I think he's going to be, like he can be like a foundational every down piece to this offense that I don't think that Luther Burden is going to be able to. So I think stock all the way up for Colston.
And his run blocking is easily good enough to be out there in every single situation, which you could not have said for, Dalton Kincaid coming into
even Laporta. Like Laporta's not a good blocker, and they figure out a way to get him on the field all the time.
Okay, I'm just going to put the next 3 names here together and kind of talk through the scenarios of why, because this is all grouped for me at the end of this tier. So Jackson Dart, Matthew Golden, and Caleb Johnson of the Pittsburgh Steelers. First with Dart. This is first round draft capital. Now, if they don't win, then most certainly Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are out of here. But in order for Brian Daboll to keep his job, he needs to win. And Jackson Dart might be the key to that. I don't know how many games they're going to get through if they are 2-5, 3-7 with Russell Wilson. At that very point, Jackson Dart is coming in and being the starting quarterback, if not before that. And if he's able to save his job, then again, this is his guy for the future. He has some rushing capabilities, as we have seen. And then he's also a downfield passer attached to Malik Neighbors on top of it. So I know you might even want to promote Jackson Dart even earlier than this, but I just don't see how a quarterback with first round draft capital can go further than this, even though the likes of, Michael Penix and Bo Nix were around this range last year for fantasy football rookie drafters as well.
Yeah, I love Jackson Dart. The rushing production for fantasy is a big deal. He averaged 61 rushing yards over his last 4 SEC games. There was moments where he's just running around Georgia defenders, and that's quarterback design stuff. That's scrambling. And then I think that Brian Daboll absolutely loves him. Everyone that's come across Jackson Dart, there's a lot of ties to this organization, absolutely adores the kid. I think he's probably going to start, let's say, about 8 games this year. And it could be the full season. You just never know. But long term, I think that Daboll and Shane are probably going to stay around because Mara has been like just so patient with all. I mean, how many years in a row were Coughlin trying to get fired? Like Gettleman, like all these guys, they just keep sticking around. I think that the Giants absolutely crushed the draft once again. So with Malik Neighbors there, I trust Brian Daboll, and I think that Jackson Dart was a little bit overthought. His production, efficiency, scrambling ability, size, all that stuff all that stuff looks like an NFL starter to me.
Now, slight pushback on that. Let's say this team absolutely sucks this year. Both of those guys get fired and they have the first pick in the draft this next year, which is a possibility, then 24 is the type of overall pick that I think you can move off of with your next regime.
Yeah, for sure. I just don't think that the Giants roster is in that bad of shape. Like they got too many good defensive linemen, Malik Neighbors, a good left tackle, and they have at least some depth at quarterback. Like that would require like Russ, Dart, Jameis, everybody sucking. I think it's easier to paint that picture with some other teams.
Okay, Matthew Golden is next as my 112. Listen, if you want to put Matthew Golden where I have Emeka Egbuka, I actually will not argue with you. And in fact, Mike Clay's projection this year for Matthew Golden is higher than it is for Emeka Egbuka at 100 targets, 61 receptions, 866 yards, and 6 touchdowns. I know we can kind of get frustrated with the Green Bay Packers and their wide receiver utilization and also the success and kind of the consistency of those guys. But then you have to think of it. There's a reason why they spent a first round pick on Matthew Golden and not a first round pick on those other players.
Correct.
But they just believe that Matthew Golden is a more talented football player and he just fits into what LaFleur wants to do a bit more often. And that speed will be weaponized here. They'll get him in a whole bunch of free releases, maybe even more downfield stuff than he did at Texas. And then those inside breakers, Jordan Love loves to throw those in the intermediate and downfield portion of the field.
Yeah, I'm with you. I would just throw away the entire history of the Packers receiver room with LaFleur because Matthew Golden is just a couple of tiers above everyone that they have out there. Perfect with LaFleur, the creativity that he has. And then I think perfect with Jordan Love with the downfield and the aggressiveness that Jordan Love plays with. And then I think the last one I wanted to make real quick is just with these transfers, like we're going to get so many transfers across college football now.
It's not an issue anymore.
You need to at least like throw away September and sometimes because it's easy for like a kid from Houston trying to make his way onto Texas. It makes sense to me that he would struggle early on and then turn into the best player. And I think that we're kind of holding his like production against him early on in the season. The last 8 games average 82 yards per game, which is like pretty much in line with a lot of first rounders. So I just want to make that little context note here because we're just going to get this kind of profile a lot. It was not perfect, but I see an ascending player with Golden, and I love the fit here.
I agree with the ascending player part because you go back and watch his stuff at Houston, it looked quite different than it did at Texas. And then you would like to think there's even a bigger jump heading into NFL coaching. And again, be flexible. If you don't need tight end, don't need quarterback, put Matthew Golden, as the 110 here instead of where I have him as the 112. And then go ahead.
One last note with him. You are signing up for LaFleur. He's not getting fired anytime soon. He's an awesome coach. And Jordan Love's not going anywhere. Like a lot of these guys with wide receivers, like those are humongous question marks. You will not have that with Matthew Golden for years and years and years.
Yeah. And then the final one, if you want to take as the 110, is Caleb Johnson with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Arthur Smith last year with a running back room of Najee Harris and Jalen Warren, who both were banged up. They were 6th in rushing attempts per game. Then in his last season in Atlanta with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, they were 4th in rushing attempts per game. And the year before that with Tyler Algier and a whole bunch of other dudes, they were 2nd in the NFL in rushing attempts per game. this is also a type of system that Caleb Johnson is going to be really good in. He was a very scheme dependent player coming out of Iowa. This is perfect. It's right up his alley. And what Mike Tomlin got on the podium and said that we just want to get bigger, stronger this offseason. Trading for DK Metcalf, a second rounder, is that. Their next pick after round 1, Caleb Johnson was that guy, and that he can carry the workload because he did it at Iowa. And so this is going to be a volume runner, I feel like, for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
This is a high volume, capable runner who was the center of his offense. A lot of NFL or Sunday-like runs, if you will, meaning he did it from the home position or the pistol position into a lot of loaded boxes. There wasn't a lot of guesswork or Saturday-like holes on his tape, and that made the evaluation a fun one and the projection an easy one.
Yeah, they just kept saying volume. He's capable of turning this into volume. Like, that's exactly what we're searching for. And also the Steelers right now, their win total's at 8.5. Aaron Rodgers very likely to play this year. They've addressed the offensive line multiple times. Like, has a lot of talent up there. And then Arthur Smith is a perfect guy for fantasy purposes. And with Jaylen Warren, that was a pretty rough last season. They brought in Kenneth Gainwell. So I think like the idea of Jaylen Warren is like not how the coaching staff used Jaylen Warren. So I'm expecting Caleb Johnson to get basically like the Najee Harris workload. And I think that this Steelers offense should be a lot better than the last like 5 seasons up in Pittsburgh.
Now, I don't think Caleb Johnson is necessarily like a great creator when things are stuffed at the line of scrimmage for him. But at the same time, he definitely has more explosive juice than someone like Najee Harris did. There were literally times he was running away from defenders and their angles were completely broken. So I'm excited for Caleb Johnson in this situation. Do you think I put it fine for those last 4, or would you reorder them in any way?
I just don't think that there's much of a difference at all the way up to Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Yeah. Like, I was like doing my like just the 2025 rankings, and I have Caleb Johnson ranked ahead of those 2 guys just based off of the team and just like the overall workload. Like, to me, this is a pretty flat tier. I think what you're saying about like, look at your own roster. Where are you in terms of like your depth at each position? How close are you to actually contending in your league, and kind of pinpointing these guys? Because I don't see like Caleb, Matthew Golden very differently than Emeka Egbuka and Quinshon Judkins.
Okay, so that is a 13th pick. So if you have the 2-1 to, let's say, again, the 107, you're in a pretty decent spot right here. Let's go to early round 2. And that brings me, again, it's up to the roster that you have in this 3-person tier. And the first one is at tight end. If you need a tight end, you can take Tyler Warren. And I'm not against Tyler Warren as a player. It was just really interesting to hear the presser. And yes, they're going to play 11 personnel, and he's going to be the focal point at tight end. And yeah, the number one thing they brought up was just the mentality, like the competitiveness that he brings to the table, and that this team lacked it last year. Now, I agree with that. Penn State, he was the entire offense. He's a bulldozer with the ball in his hands. He's, a bull, just wrecking everyone out there in terms of how he breaks tackles. They love that he watched John Riggins growing up. But I just mean this passing offense, it's hugely questionable. And I even think Tyler Warren has some questionable aspects to his receiving profile on top of it too, in terms of beating man-to-man coverage unless you bully them. So in that regard, that's why there's such a gap between Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren, along with the questionable future of the play caller and the infrastructure and environment here too.
Yeah, I love him a tier above Warren pre-draft, and I think that gap even got wider post-draft. The Colts were 27th in pass attempts last year, and then I think all of the production that Warren was getting in Wildcats, you're not going to do that with Richardson, Daniel Jones, and Jonathan Taylor. I think the screen department's a lot easier to get a bunch of screens at Penn State. It's a little bit harder when Josh Downs, A.D. Mitchell, Michael Pittman, Jonathan Taylor are also on the roster. So like Tyler Warren needs to win in the real route department. Maybe he can do that. I don't think that was his specialty at Penn State, just based off my film evaluation. So I am a little bit nervous, at least with the RPO stuff. He's going to be on the field because you don't ask your tight ends to block very much in that situation. So he's going to get a lot of snaps here. But we're talking about a very unsettled quarterback coaching situation. And I think that the projection based off the spreadsheets is not as simple based off of how Tyler Warren got his production in college.
Now, again, if he landed with another organization that didn't have a short yardage player, I would have projected him for, 3 rushing touchdowns, if not more than that this year. He's not going to get that with Anthony Richardson or Daniel Jones and Jonathan Taylor. I mean, unless they do something absolutely crazy. So that is even a dock of the potential production he could have with others. I will add that Shane Steichen said, quote, when we were at the Chargers, we had an Antonio Gates rule that when he was one-on-one, we would try to get him the football. He said it would take a bit of time for Tyler Warren to get there, but that's, I don't know if I would compared the movement capabilities of Antonio Gates and Tyler Warren. But yeah, selfless player, can do it all. 11 personnel. This allows him to keep just one tight end on the field. He plays above the rim, but I just like Colson Loveland a lot more. Okay. Moving on to Chicago Bears version of Jameson Williams. This is Luther Burden III, one of my favorites. Pure explosives attached now to a play caller that can generate explosives. As we've talked about, this team is loaded with talent. You have DJ Moore, you have Rome Odunze, you have Caleb Williams, you have Colson Loveland, and you have a very questionable backfield. But what Ben Johnson is so good at is just manufacturing space and then getting the football in players who thrive in space. And Luther Burden definitely does that. It's going to be, I think, maybe a bit high variance of when his production is going to happen. And even this year is probably going to tell us a lot of how they view Luther Burden as like a full-time player, which is very difficult to do, or as someone who is still growing into what his game can be.
I think it's going to be the latter. I think it's a big step up for Luther Burden to not play on the outside. He was like firmly a slot player at Missouri. That's pretty much what he's going to be with two outside receivers already on the roster. I think it's going to be a lot for him to eclipse one of those guys for two wide receiver sets. And that's more or less like kind of the barometer that we're looking for fantasy success. Long-term, Luther Burden has like 5-star traits. So he can turn into something long-term. They can easily move on from DJ Moore in the next couple seasons here, and Caleb Williams can turn into one of the better quarterbacks. You already have Ben Johnson there for the long haul. So like, I think the long-term opportunity is there for Luther Burden. I think for this year, it gets pretty challenging on how he's going to get the football. Like last year, for example, Rome Odunze, who was a top 10 pick, was well outside the top 100 overall players in fantasy production. Obviously, we're expecting Caleb to take a huge jump. But I just think it's going to be a little bit harder for Burden to get the ball, especially if we're right on our Colson Loveland evaluation.
As high variance as Jameson Williams was in his past, we know that like finally when it kind of clicked for him this year, and it took some years with Ben Johnson, he was a top 20 scoring wide receiver in points per game. Now, again, that was just Sam Laporte and Amon-Ra St. Brown, but a really good backfield too. This backfield isn't even close to how good the Chicago or the Detroit Lions backfield was. So I'm not saying they're going to throw the football 80% of the time, but there is a pathway for me that Luther Burden can become a top 20 scoring wide receiver in the NFL.
Yeah, I think there's like, if you want to like the 95th percentile outcomes are all really strong for Luther Burden. Jameson Williams was playing it outside and in two wide receiver sets. We just don't have any proof that Luther Burden can do that. I think he could, but we just haven't seen that. And
if you read between the lines, I think when Ben Johnson went back and watched the DJ Moore tape, he was not thrilled either.
Neither was I. Neither was I.
So again, you have a guy who's basically in complete control of his franchise and just immediately calling Luther Burden a stud.
Luther, stud. Yeah, I mean, you saw the highlights, right? I mean, he's a playmaker waiting to happen. I mean, went to the same high school, I believe, as Jameson Williams. JMO texted me right after we took him, and he said, you got a dog just like me, you know? And so
I'm in. I'm definitely in on Luther Burden. Okay, this is the biggest flag plant of this entire episode. So if you're new around here, hit that subscribe button, leave a thumbs up if you join me on this one. I have Kyle Williams.
Let's go.
As a 16th overall player. I've seen him ranked as like 305, you know? I just don't get that. He has legit, and it might be quiet, but top wide receiver potential on his own team as a rookie. And it's like you all don't even care. This is someone who did play on the outside at Washington State, has a variety of releases already that is smooth in creating that separation, has big play potential. Think of the big plays that, again, Kayshon Boutte was getting from Drake May. We're talking levels to this game with Kyle Williams being a superior player to Kayshon Boutte. What, are we nervous about freaking second round wide receivers that this team took last year that couldn't even scratch the field? Like, if Kyle Williams hits the ground running, which he can, he's played multiple years in college and produced, then it wouldn't shock me at all, Hayden, if he's the Patriots' #1 pass catcher this season.
Yeah, he's my wide receiver 6 in my 2025 only rankings. So I'm all the way in on Kyle Williams. Stepdig's returning from that ACL injury, and I saw the same thing. Outside, like X receiver, I know he doesn't have the size of traditional X receivers. He was playing X receiver in that offense, winning at the line. Yards after the catch ability was there. Big explosive plays down the field. All of that stuff was there. So I think he's a guy that you can manufacture touches to, but he also would win by himself. This is an emerging offense right now. Just like their win total is way up versus where it was the last couple of years. We trust Josh McDaniels. We really like what we saw from Drake May. We really hate what we saw from the wide receivers here. So like, I guess like, my only question to you is like, Why not ahead of Luther Burden?
Whoa. Hayden, you should look at other people's, like, literally, I am by far and away the highest on Kyle Williams.
I know,
So
just the way that you
to this
described
point,
the two situations was totally different.
well, because I also think Luther Burden is a more talented football player than Kyle Williams, just personally. So, like, this is the next 3 years, I'm going to rank Luther Burden ahead of where Kyle Williams is.
Fair enough.
But again, if you're looking in the whole grand scheme of things, you will not find another Dynasty Rookie Rankings that has Kyle Williams as high. What, are we nervous about Stephon Diggs off an ACL and Jalen Polk getting touched? Like, Drake May had Tez Johnson, all of you, like, licking the floor thinking he's a good NFL prospect. Like, what are we doing here? If Kyle Williams is as good as we think he is, this is, like, you don't have to take him here, but man, get him at the end of round 2. Get him in the middle of round 2 if you want to, because
Draft him in best
there's
ball.
real chances. There's real chances. Okay. Next up, 17th overall, I have in the next tier of Trey Harris. And we have Ladd McConkey on this team. Fantastic player. Loved him on this channel last season. Trey Harris is a very different skill set. An outside, downfield, ball winner. Now, when Harbaugh and company got on the mic, they were saying that he's a great route runner, which we had the small sample of that. We don't have a big sample of that. But it wouldn't be shocking at all if it's the Ladd McConkey, Trey Harris combo, more so than it's the Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnson combo moving forward. Like, Trey Harris is super smart, used to play quarterback, has like a great aura about him in terms of these interviews and his knowledge of the game, his IQ on top of it. I'm in on Trey Harris developing, because if he does develop, there's a lot of traits to me that he could become a real winner of the NFL draft.
I see it the same exact way. He just like the polished version of Quentin Johnson. Like, they like stylistically will be running similar routes, but I just think that Trey Harris catches the football well. And you talked about the interviews, completely agree with that. I think he's a way more reliable option. And then if you do read between the lines and look at just a couple, if you want to extrapolate with a couple of these in-breaking routes, there's some good stuff there. So I'm very optimistic that he's going to be a 2 wide receiver set player by the end of this season. I think the second round draft capital is enough for the Chargers to kind of like look at the depth that they need on the offense and defensive line the next couple draft classes. So I think the most likely scenario is going to be him as the number 2 target for Justin Herbert. And you can just keep signing me up for that.
Yeah. They didn't add that much at tight end either. So it really is like this wide receiver room. And it's clear that they wanted to, make Justin Herbert's life a little bit better with offensive weapons, with Amari Hampton in round 1, and then Trey Harris in round 2. And by the way, when he catches these passes, he pulls away from SEC defenders, away. So big play potential here to match up with Justin Herbert's arm. Can't wait. Okay. One of our favorites in Jaden Higgins is next as the 18th overall player. I thought that they might try to find a different body type than Nico Collins. Instead, they kind of match the body type. Now, what Nico Collins has turned into and emerged into is truly top 7, 8 wide receiver stuff in the NFL, if not even slightly higher than that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't expect Jaden Higgins to get to that point. But what Nick Caley, the new play caller, is going to do is have a whole bunch of 2 wide receiver set stuff and then 3 wide receiver set stuff on top of it. And again, reading between the lines of the investment wide receiver this offseason with Christian Kirk, with Jaden Higgins, with Jalen Noel, who we'll talk about here in a moment, the Tank Dell stuff does not seem great moving forward. And so I just believe that Jaden Higgins has excellent body control in terms of catching away from his frame, can win down the field. And I just wouldn't ask him to run a whole bunch of comeback routes and curl routes, because that's the only place that I saw him getting stuck in the mud.
I think this would be the ranking I disagree with the most. I think that he should be in front of Tyler Warren. I mean, just compared to like Emeka and Golden and Higgins, like we're talking about like 10 to 15 spots in overall draft capital here. And he's attached to CJ Stroud long-term. He's going to be in the 2 wide receiver sets. Like maybe not immediately this year with Christian Kirk, but long-term, certainly. Yes, I agree. Tank Dell, if they get him on the field at all, that should be a win for how serious that knee injury was. And especially with a broken leg the previous season. So man, I'm kind of trusting like his ability to run post routes and go routes, which is a lot of this kind of deep play action based offense. You're not going to be asking him to run a bunch of outs and slants and stuff where you're actually requiring him to like kind of sit down and sink his hips. But he can run, and he's got a big catch radius. And I think that's exactly what CJ Stroud's trying to do here. And I'm expecting Stroud to just look a lot more competent this next year with the new coaching staff, new leadership on the offensive line. So I just want to believe in CJ Stroud and believe in this draft capital a lot.
I will add, if you don't take Kyle Williams as the 16th overall player, I am ahead of ADP and consensus on Jaden Higgins. So like, if you want to draft them like this, Jaden Higgins is going as the 18th overall player. I have him again, if you want to move Kyle Williams, as the 17th.
Man, I'm guessing I'm just like, I don't know what I'm missing. 34th overall pick, connected to CJ Stroud, big, fast, productive.
Yeah. By the way, for those, and Producer Weaves can throw a screenshot out there, I'm using Dynasty Data Lab, which he sent me because Producer Weaves is a massive Dynasty, if not more than that, sicko. And yeah, he's the wide receiver 7, 18th overall. Next up, we continue on with Cam Skattebo.
Ooh.
What a backfield. I mean, in this very show last year, he didn't even get a mention in his own, I believe, day 3 press conference. But I was like, Tyrone Tracy, the best dart throw. Then we got to August and he was on my perfect team you can draft in round 17 or 18. That was Tyrone Tracy. And now you get to line him up with also one of our favorites, and Cam Skattebo, who got a lot of pub during his run in the press conference. Brian Daboll just kept talking about his pass catching ability, which I totally agree with. Like, it's kind of shocking how good he is in the receiving game. Now, he's downright awful in the pass program, unless you can kind of avert his attention to not trying to spear every single one of his opponents like he's Bill Goldberg and like whittle that down to just some focus of mirroring and staying in front. Yeah. But he's also like a pound the rock guy that brings like an attitude and mental toughness to this team. So I have no idea what the split is going to be between Skattebo and Tyrone Tracy, but I am here for it.
Well, he got drafted earlier and is bigger and had a better profile coming into the draft. So
yeah, but the other guy also crossed 1,000 yards last year.
For sure.
We can't just throw that away.
No, it'll be a committee, and Devin Singletary is still there. He's on a $6 million guaranteed contract. So I think it's going to be a little bit of a committee no matter what. They're going to figure this thing out as this Giants team goes along. But I just am envisioning Cam Skattebo just taking over and like being like a New York like hero. I can just like totally see how this one's playing out. He actually got drafted earlier than I was expecting him. Like, I ranked him higher in my own top 100, but the fact that he went 105th overall was like almost a surprise to me. But that's a huge win for Cam Skattebo, and I think it's a good landing spot for him, especially if Jackson Dart turns into something long term. But he had all of the production profile. He like looks like an NFL bell cow back if he got the requisite draft capital, and to me, he did.
I might pivot here. I think there's like a big teardrop after this. Like, I don't know if I feel as good about anyone else. Like, these are the top 19 players to me. Load up on as many top 19 picks as you can get. Because, again, Hayden was saying how flat it was. He felt from, like, Warren to here. And we talked about how flat it was in the rest of the first-round tier from Henderson to Caleb Johnson on top of it. But if you get from Henderson, I know we all want top 5, right? We definitely do. But Henderson to Skattebo to me feels like really good of knowing who these players are and kind of the situations they're in on top of it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, so I am going to do a slight pivot. Bruce Weaves, don't hate me. But I just like look at Skattebo, and then I look at the 20th overall player in Bashal Tutin, and I don't know if I can put them on the same category. Like, I appreciate Bashal Tutin for being an explosive big play threat. And that's basically what Liam Cohen said is, we don't want to have 12 to 14 play drives all the time. One, Brian Thomas Jr. and Travis Hunter are definitely going to help with that.
Yes.
At running back, I don't think Travis Etienne helps with that. Bashal Tutin does, and Tank Bigsby does. Tank Bigsby is actually like low-key a really explosive big play threat back there despite his size. I just don't see how someone like Bashal Tutin turns into this year's Bucky Irving in his offense, when he's like a very, very different style of runner. So we can look at last year and look at day 3 draft capital and say this happened, so it's going to happen again. But I just see them as like very different players, and I actually think they're going to achieve a different thing. But at the same time, this is Liam Cohen, and his rushing attack is pure sauce.
Yeah, and then with Bucky, that was just he's had to kind of beat out Rachaad White. There's kind of 2 like Rachaad Whites in front of Tutin, and then I also think that Bucky was just kind of profiled a little bit better as just like picking up what's necessary in front of him, showing a little more physicality than what Tutin
awesome
has. So yeah, I see Tutin more like in the Jalen Wright mold, and like there's a lot of these guys that come in and out of the league. You can, I think, get excited with what he can be with Liam Cohen, but it's also like not the styled player that Liam Cohen has like ever been attached to. So we'll see what happens there. But just like simply put, like look at the workload and the size difference between Scotabo and Tootin. Like, and that's to me like the biggest thing for fantasy is just you got to check those boxes. And Tootin might be more like full PPR or just like hit like home run change of pace type of guy, and that doesn't really translate to fantasy points.
On the note that Liam Cohen hasn't been attached to a back like this before, this might have been a James Gladstone selection, because James Gladstone, during his 2 interviews to become the Jacksonville Jaguars general manager, brought up Bashal Tutin's name as a priority target on day 3.
He was somebody that I highlighted as a day 3 priority or target for us to consider. And it's cool to see that come to life. Obviously, our coaching staff presented a vision for him, but on the front end, he was somebody that, myself, I was drawn to in some way, shape, or form, and excited to see all that unfold here in real time.
So just a thought. Again, we want to be able to strike from distance was a phrase that was used. Liam Cohen did bring up that Bashal Tutin wins behind the line of scrimmage, forced missed tackles, went through the roof in that area of the field. It's not like a 1-to-1 fit.
Yeah, and I think Etienne's going to be on this team this year. Like, I don't think that the Tutin investment is enough. Yeah, that's not enough to like move on from Etienne.
Okay, I have 2 tight ends next that are ranked much higher than a lot of people, but it's kind of because I think they're flying under the radar in comparison to the public. And that's Mason Taylor of the Jets, and that's Terrence Ferguson of the LA Rams. First, Mason Taylor is going to like start for this team immediately with the Jets. I mean, I know he's attached to Justin Fields, but literally their only other pass catcher is Garrett Wilson, and then they took him in round 2. It's really simple. He's going to be out there all the time. I'm not saying he's the most explosive player, but he's super fluid. Played 3 years at LSU. That includes playing at the end of the line of scrimmage. That was attached to Jaden Daniels on top of it, and now Nussmeier. So he's someone that has a ton of experience, has NFL pedigree, and he's just basically every down tight end.
Yep.
And those can be really difficult to find in your Dynasty rookie drafts.
Yeah, you never know where the football is coming from when it leaves Justin Fields' hands, but there's also an offense that was been attached to Sam Laporta. And I think that Taylor and Laporta are actually very similar players in general, and you're not throwing the ball to Lazard and whoever else they have. It's going to Taylor.
Malachi Corley?
Yeah, definitely not to him.
Joe Douglas's wide receiver 3 last year, whatever it was.
He should not have said that. He should not have said that. Don't lie to us. For me, just for this year, Ferguson has a lot harder competition to get on the field versus Taylor. So I think there's going to be a gap here, but they were only drafted like a couple spots long-term, and Ferguson gets attached to Sean McVay. So I think in Dynasty, they get pretty close together. I think in a redraft, I would have a bigger gap than what you have here.
Yeah. Terrence Ferguson, he reminds Sean McVay of Chris Cooley. McVay coached tight ends, and Chris Cooley was one of the first guys he ever selected. Gerald Everett was the first player Sean McVay and Les Snead ever chose together. And I just love Terrence Ferguson's athletic profile because it fits. 1, it's the only one that we have basically of these tight ends. And 2, it fits in that elite category, and elite tight ends have to have top end athleticism. And I just liked him a lot more than a whole bunch of people out there as an inline presence who also scoots down the field.
Oh, yeah.
And to me made some nice hands catches. So they believe in him. They invested, and it's an often injured Tyler Higbee, and then they have basically already forgotten about Colby Parkinson in that locker room too.
Yeah, Davis Allen's also in the mix there. So yeah, he'll get on the field by the end of the season. I think for Dynasty, it's going to be harder to navigate because maybe as Ferguson takes off, now you have McVay with we don't know which quarterback, but the draft capital speaks for itself. Like tight ends typically don't go rounds 1 and round 2.
Tyler Shuck right here. It's pretty obvious Tyler Shuck's going to start games this year. The Derek Carr stuff does not seem great. They seem to be on 2 different pages, he and the organization.
Bible pages.
So he's going to start games. Nick Underhill's already calling it. We are too. We mentioned in his profile, even though I didn't love him as a prospect, he reminded me of Aiden O'Connell. He's going to start games in his future. So this might not be, a 2026 person that you attach your wagon to, but at the same time, if he starts games this year and they win enough of them, you're instantly getting a value increase on what this player is. And you can flip that for maybe someone that has a quarterback needy team on top of it.
Yeah, it's like from Ryan Tannehill on a good day to Aiden O'Connell on a bad day. I think he's going to start week 1. I think he's going to start over Spencer Rattler. And they seemed like they were kind of like all eyes on Tyler Shuck. Like all the reports was like, we don't like Shador. We don't like any of these other guys. We're willing to skip over Jackson Dart because we really like this guy. To me, that means he's going to start this season. Yeah, and especially in Superflex. I mean, like there's only so many guys that are starting that can fill that spot. Like he's one of them.
Like if you have a questionable quarterback too, like take him at the top of this round, pretty easily, pretty easily. Just again, referring to Dynasty Data Lab, he's their 27th player in ADP right now. So this is well ahead of that. And then again, putting him at the top of this tier would make him the 20th.
I will say he can sling the football. Like his best throws are pretty dang good, and he has Olave and Shaheed.
His worst throws are pretty terrible too.
For sure, we got to work on those worst throws. That's for sure. But I think like everyone's just like assuming he's like definitely dog shit. I don't think that's necessarily the case. There's still a path here.
All right, to close out this tier, I have Jack Bash. I actually might continue this tier. We'll see. I don't want to just load up round 3, but Jack Bash here, a player that you and I love. Yep. I think in a other system, you would see the pathway to production immediately. He kind of just fills same areas of Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers on this team. I know they took Dante Thornton to like maybe stretch the field and be a sacrificial player, but we have seen Jack Bash play tight end, slot wide receiver, and outside wide receiver. And he's a really good route runner and also is very physical at the top of his routes and then makes some tough catches. So I can see why he can be a Chip Kelly type. I can see why he can be a Pete Carroll type. I know that he was drafted on day 2, but just based on the situation at this moment, this is where I had to place him. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, 58th overall, I think is like real draft capital for Jack Bash.
Sure.
He could have easily gone round 3. I like this tape. He's just like really good yards after the catch wise, and he's really reliable. He is inside outside versatility. The thing like long term for him is Jacoby Myers this is a contract season for him. There's no depth behind him at wide receiver. If like Myers leaves and they don't like absolutely hit their next draft pick, like all of a sudden like this potential volume hog could kind of get into that role. Obviously, you're always going to be dealing with Brock Bowers and Genty. But yeah, Pete Carroll is going to be there for the next couple of years. I trust Chip Kelly, and it sounds like Geno Smith's going to be there for the next couple of years. To me, that's like good enough. So I'm a little bit worried about this year because he's so similar to Jacoby Myers. But the year after that, we might like all of a sudden be talking ourselves into Jack Bash.
Again, this is what makes, I think, ranking Dynasty rookies so difficult because I have, Kyle Williams 2 tiers above, and that's a 3rd round player versus someone drafted in the 50s. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm just looking at it. If Kyle Williams is the player that I think he is, he's the Patriots' arguably best wide receiver immediately. And that is very impossible for Jack Bash to be the best pass catcher on his team immediately. Round 3 is going to be large. And we're going to start off with Jalen Noel. Jalen Noel's comparison for me was Christian Kirk, and he lands as the understudy for Christian Kirk. This could be really good if Christian Kirk gets injured this year. I think you can see Jalen Noel play immediately because there are areas he wins. He's a vertical player. He can go up and get the football. His outside breaking routes are freaking sweet. That's also where Tank Dell was awesome with CJ Stroud on top of it. But he's wide receiver 4 on this team right now. He dropped, I think, later than a bunch of people expected him to in the NFL draft. At the same time, I saw a bunch of 2nd round projections. I really like Jalen Noel, but that's why I want him at the top of this tier, and I just couldn't force him any higher.
No, that's a way to approach this. I had him as an early round 2 grade. He goes in the middle of round 3. You have to knock him. I think like the big thing for him is I thought there was a chance he can be a 2 wide receiver set player because I did like his route running ability just in general. But with Jaden Higgins and Nico Collins there long term, like how is he getting into 2 wide receiver sets? He's just not going to. So you have to knock him down. I think he's going to be like a better in best ball guy, and hopefully CJ Stroud goes back into that top 10 quarterback category again, and maybe you can add a 3rd pass catcher. But most offenses, it's the top 2 guys, and then everybody else is not relevant. I think that's probably the tier that we're getting with Jalen Noel, even though I personally think he's better than that.
Isaac TeSlaa's next. Our guy Brad Holmes. We're the only video, I think, on the entire platform called YouTube that has millions and millions and billions of videos on Isaac TeSlaa. And I have no idea what their vision of him is because he's an athlete with little production, and their slot players are a tight end who's inside to outside versatility, and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has inside to outside versatility, and then Jameson Williams is still on the roster. So if they view him as an outside player, that is just an entirely massive projection, and he might get there. His best football is probably ahead of him, but I do want to bank on like the buzz of Jameson Williams, and probably that is big contract is not coming on the way. And just again, an offensive environment and infrastructure of this team that these guys aren't going anywhere for quite a while, and they invested this level of draft capital in him, and they haven't really missed on players that they've quote unquote overdrafted recently either.
Right. What can go wrong by sending in future draft capital for a guy that catches 28
2
passes?
third-round picks.
But I agree with you. Like, we have to take this one seriously. Just looking at the way that the Lions are constructed, like Goff's making a lot of money. They have a lot of superstars that are going to make a ton of money. You can't pay all of them. And I do think that they created production out of Jameson Williams that they might say, like, thank you for your services. We got to move on eventually. And TeSlaa, I know he played in the slot, but he is definitely big enough and fast enough to go play on the outside. Now, I didn't see any evidence that he can beat press man coverage, and that's going to be him in development. And we'll see if he can do that. But like, if all of a sudden he is able to do that, then all of a sudden, like, you're looking at a pretty nice landing spot for Isaac TeSlaa. The draft capital is very serious. Like, we're talking about, he went ahead of a lot of guys people thought were really good. So if you're still ranking those guys ahead of Isaac TeSlaa, I think you're doing this wrong.
Next is Jalen Milroe, who I'm really hoping can be really good in the NFL. We know he's not going to start games this year. He didn't go until the 3rd round. He was the draft pick that they acquired for trading away Geno Smith. Look, if he gets starts, start him, because the rushing upside is incredible in a Clint Kubiak offense that actually can accentuate quarterback athleticism on top of it. Then on the flip side, we just might not see him for 2 years. So
if ever, you never know. Yeah, he went later than I was definitely hoping for. We were definitely more optimistic than
he went later, but it's a good landing spot, I feel like, at the same time.
They can move on from Sam Darnold if he's not playing well this year. I think we're going to see some Jalen Milroe every once in a while. I did like that they said they're going to give him some starting reps just like throughout the off-season program, just to like get him up to speed a little bit more. So yeah, among all, if he was going round 3, the Seahawks were a decent enough landing spot for him. And I do agree. If he does start, like, we're talking about one of the most electric players, period. So yeah, you have to value that.
I mean, his explosive runs, 20 plus yards, like over and over and over and over again. Yeah. I think they said that Sam Darnold was going to get 90% of the reps during practices. And then, they already traded away Sam Howell. So it's just Drew Lock battling it out with Jalen Milroe. And they signed Drew Lock before they were able to draft Jalen Milroe.
I think they would start Jalen over Drew Lock if like something happened to Darnold.
I mean, the biggest dice roll and the biggest gamble of all this, but look, what are you doing with 3rd-round picks other than taking someone like Jalen Milroe?
Right.
You could be drafting Harold Fannin. I actually like this 3rd round quite a bit. All right. Harold Fannin, and I'm going to have Elijah Arroyo here as well, back to back. And this is just your preference. First with Fannin, this isn't necessarily a 2025 play. It's beyond, because this is the last year of David Njoku's deal in terms of guaranteed money with the Cleveland Browns. They could easily move on from him. They were asked about this. Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski was, and they basically said, yeah, you're kind of onto something with that. I have no idea exactly what Harold Fannin's going to be like in the NFL. I do think comments that he's too small are somewhat unfounded, because he's the same size as a whole bunch of starting tight ends out there, from Brock Bowers to Trey McBride. Now he's also the same size of other tight ends that were just better figments of our imagination, like Ladarius Green and Chigo Kwankwo, than others. But this is a really young player who was his entire offense, and he's with someone in Kevin Stefanski who the primary pass catcher on a lot of concepts are the tight end. And so this is a really nice landing spot for Harold Fannin.
Completely agree. He's also the profile that, like, he could have fell to the 4th round. That would not have surprised me. The fact that he went in round 3, I thought was a win for him. You get rid of David Njoku, and then all of a sudden it is more or less just him. They also have like done a really good job of like scheming up production for David Njoku when like there was not a lot of easy answers in that offense. So I think some of the screen production that Njoku got, you can use for Harold Fannin. I just know that the Browns, like, their analytics spreadsheets bros, nobody had better spreadsheets than Harold Fannin. So I'm a believer that they have like a path for him.
Elijah Arroyo received some of the wildest coach speak that I've ever seen in a press conference after the draft.
Elijah really, like, some of our coaches were like, maybe he's an X receiver. I mean, this guy can like full route tree, like super, like explosive. I mean,
first, John Schneider got on the mic, said that some coaches on staff even asked if he could play X wide receiver. He's been Kyle Pitts-pilled just a little bit. I think they watched this tight end who had like an 11.1 ADOT in college run downfield routes, and that just blew their mind a little bit. the X wide receiver stuff might get some run because they literally don't have one on the team. They don't have someone that can line up on the outside and run downfield and be a sacrificial player in that. So again, the idea of Elijah Arroyo might even be better than what's actually achievable on the field. He just has a long way to go. And then finally, John Schneider said if he hadn't been injured like the last 3 seasons or whatever, that he had top 15 talent in this draft. That's a step too far than I would have taken it here. He's certainly a receiving first tight end. His blocking needs a whole bunch of work, but they certainly seem to believe in him a lot.
Well, he did go 14 picks ahead of DK Metcalf, Mr. X receiver, who was also dealing with some injuries. So yeah, it's weird. Like, I think like stylistically, like that's the type of player that they're hoping for. Like he's a vertical threat at tight ends. It's a very odd situation that he's put himself in. He did have like very little production, 1 to 9 yards down the field. I know they have that covered in this offense with JSN and Cooper Kupp and the 2 backs. So I think they're going to be asking him to like run up that same big wheel routes as well, some post routes, some big corner routes. And yeah, it's going to be like a weird situation because I do think that his ADOT's going to be like fairly high. You just don't see that. So maybe more better in best ball. I think he needs some development like you mentioned there. But it is a good landing spot. It does make Noah Fant probably a cut candidate or a trade candidate at any moment. So there's a path to playing time for him.
Yeah, and Clint Kubiak in New Orleans obviously used a whole bunch of multi-tight end sets from Taysom Hill to Juwan Johnson to Foster Moreau on top of that. So maybe they can do that here and get him on the field a bit more often than these other teams that use singular guys.
I mean, Juwan Johnson was a wide receiver converted tight end. There's maybe a little something there.
Maybe. We'll see. Okay. Moving on. This tier's like super flat to me. We got Pat Bryant. Again, our guy, Pat Bryant. Thank you, Sean Payton, for your role in us promoting the only video on him on the internet.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, Coach Speak hero himself. Sean Payton said he reminded him of Michael Thomas coming into the NFL.
I can't believe that one. I mean, how can you rank him this low? If Sean Payton thinks he's Michael Thomas, and you're putting him at 35.
There were so many things about his game that reminded me of Mike Thomas. And with respect to Mike, who became, I mean, holy cow, you know, you don't ever want to put pressure on a rookie like that. We're just talking about traits.
Don't hate me, man. We were higher on Pat Bryant than any person on planet Earth prior to the draft. He had some of the best hands in this class, point blank period.
Yeah.
I don't know if I saw much dynamism to his game, but at the same time, this is someone who, put Devon Vele on the field constantly last year as a 7th round 26-year-old. And so if he's hyping up Pat Bryant, who's slightly younger than that and has much better draft capital than that, then we should probably listen, because
yes,
I know people want, Troy Franklin and Marvin Mims to be something. Marvin Mims is like a role gadget player. Troy Franklin is even less of that. And then Pat Bryant has the size that Sean Payton covets, and he just loves the big bodies in the receiving game.
I think he's going to play. I'm taking Sean Payton's word for it. He can block. He's massive. He's got reliable hands. Like, to me, like those are like kind of the traits that Sean Payton's like hoping for. And he'll rely that he can kind of scheme up some of these guys. Yeah. He's playing football on this team as a rookie. I think he immediately jumps a bunch of the guys that we just talked about. He's gonna be like,
wow,
Mims on like, he's not gonna pass up Mims. He's not fast enough to pass up Mims and Sutton. But I think the other guys, I think he has.
He's like shot play. Mims is shot play and screen guy. That's right. He's not out there running a whole bunch of routes. So if you had one pick in your rookie draft, Hayden, are you taking Pat Bryant or Isaac TeSlaa?
I don't see Pat Bryant turning into Michael Thomas. I can at least like close my eyes and like all of a sudden TeSlaa like some freak athlete on the Lions. So I'd probably go.
So you said you would rank him ahead. So where would you rank him of guys we already talked about?
No, I was just saying like how could you rank him 35th if Sean Payton thinks that he's Michael Thomas?
Got it.
This is appropriate. And by the way, nobody else is probably drafting Pat Bryant. No. So you're probably ahead still.
This is technically a tier break. Again, I just want to make Besh into one as well. So think of Pat Bryant as the end of this group, because the rest of this is like whatever your flavor is, whatever shots you want to take, have your favorites at the end of round 3. I know a bunch of my drafts go 3 rounds or 4 rounds. So next up for me is Devin Neal. I just think Devin Neal is the type of running back to make good on 6th round draft capital, whatever it was for him, because eyes and feet are connected. He's going to have an opportunity. He just has to be the second best back on this team behind Alvin Kamara to have a chance. And I think he can definitely do that. So it was a nice situation with bad draft capital, that Devin Neal, and I kind of want to bank on those.
Yeah, he's just like a very straightforward player. So I think that of the guys that are going to make a roster, he's got a pretty good chance despite the draft capital. He's just like not a freak athlete and freak size. So I think that's why he slid in a very deep draft class.
from here on out, 32 to 36, it's Dylan Sampson, my guy Savion Williams, Jaden Blue, and then we'll have Jalen Royals and DJ Giddens. Just to go through some of these names, we know Dylan Sampson is now Quinshon Judkins' backups. However, we have seen there is a course of history where guys who were kind of the second player selected on the same position do outperform the first one. So I'm leaving the door open for that, even though I much preferred Quinshon Judkins in his tape. Savion Williams, get the football in his hands. Let's make it work. Let's not forget that this team had a plethora of the talents that they did at wide receiver, and they're still like, oh yeah, we need the dog that is Savion Williams on this team. And it goes into LaFleur's coaching for me, Hayden, where he's good at scheming up guys. Wildcat stuff in there is too. And Savion is his new toy. Let's put it that way.
Maybe he's Josh Jacobs' backup. We'll see how Marshawn Lloyd does.
No, they believe he's a wide receiver. But maybe some development is needed after a 23-year-old 5 years at TCU still drops 3.
It's a good offense for him to go to. I'll give you some credit here.
Jaden Blue, this is an interesting one. And I think Jalen Royals kind of go hand in hand here, where they land in 2 positive situations, but with questionable draft capital. Jaden Blue's draft capital actually might not be that questionable in comparison to where he was expected to go. But we were all just searching, like we were the Chargers, who was their running back investment. Jaden Blue is just so, not typecast, but his range of outcomes to me is quite narrow, where I don't see a tackle breaker. I see someone who has fumble issues. He's mainly going to be a passing down back who can win his one-on-one reps. And I just don't know if he is able to surpass Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders, as weird it is to say, in the other aspects of being a down to down running back for this team.
Yeah, I think that he's probably closer to what the Bills have as a change of pace, pure receiving type of back with Jaden Blue. I didn't see enough as a pure rusher or in pass protection. To me, you need to get him out on the route. Now, some of his receiving work was nearly the best in the class in terms of just his ability to run routes and turn those into explosives. So I do see the path there. I didn't think that the Cowboys were going to go with this style running back in the draft. I thought that Javonte was going to be the pass protection bro and eat up a bunch of targets. And then they were going to find somebody with some explosives on the ground. I don't think that's what Jaden Blue is, but now I'm turning around the step chart. I'm so who is that guy? It probably should have been Rico Dowdle, going back to that.
It probably could have. They should have just taken Scatterbo. Jerry Jones, this isn't going to surprise you, got on the podium and said, oh yeah, if it fell correctly, we would have taken a running back much earlier than we did. So I think the door is still open for some veterans to enter here as well. They even took one in the 7th round on Mafa. So we'll see what happens. Yeah. And then Jalen Royals, again, he was the apple of many's eye heading into the draft. You and I were probably the lowest on him of anyone that does evaluations. He lands in the 4th round. He lands with the Kansas City Chiefs. To me, he's just a Rashee Rice hedge for that team.
That makes
yards
sense.
after catch, pick it up there. He has a bit more verticality to his game compared to what Rashee Rice did coming out of SMU, I believe.
Yep.
But I'm just not big on Jalen Royals as this complete player like other people were.
He's not physical like Rashee Rice is, and then Royals also was in a Mickey Mouse offense and a Mickey Mouse role. It's a big step up, and he did it against very bad competition. So he'll be a depth piece. He'll be the same guy when we're doing our Super Bowl projections and he projects for 19 yards. That's going to be Royals.
And to close this out, DJ Giddens. There's a whole bunch of other backs that I could have put here, but I placed DJ Giddens here just because the backups behind Jonathan Taylor do not knock your socks off. It's like Tyler Goodson. So DJ Giddens, I think, has some juice to his game. He created a whole bunch of explosives in college. He's almost a Tevin Coleman-esque player to me. And maybe there's a chance that Jonathan Taylor gets injured and they need a backup to emerge. And I would rank DJ Giddens ahead of some others out there. Your thoughts?
Yeah.
Or like other rookies, if you want to bring up some other name.
Yeah, I think Giddens a good football player. It's a good landing spot in terms of how they're going to use him. He's going to be their passing down back there. And I thought that he had some pretty good receptions and some good speed there. And I think that if something did happen, he has at least a chance to inherit some of the early down stuff. Although like Jarquez Hunter with the Rams, I think that he deserves a mention just because I'm a little bit less sold on Kyren Williams. I held the line last year. I'm not holding the line this year on Kyren Williams, adding another running back to the mix. They didn't get anything out of Blake Corum. So I'm a little bit higher on Jarquez Hunter. And then I guess
Jarquez Hunter thing real quick. My issue is if Kyron Williams is Jon Snow, then Blake Corum is just a repeat of him right behind him. Now, it is on my radar slightly that Sean McVay said Jarquez Hunter has, some explosives in him because neither of those other backs do.
Correct.
So if they're looking for more big plays, then, you have to look elsewhere other than Kyron Williams and Blake Corum, most likely.
Okay, a couple just bigger names. Shedeur Sanders, obviously, like most fifth rounders are not like even mentioned. Obviously, we know he has better talent than that. I think there is still a path to him getting some starts. I think that he's like at least draftable. I think Ellick fell out of the rankings because he fell in the draft. I think that's appropriate. And then I was a big fan of Damian Martinez, but he fell to the 7th round. It sounds like there's some maturity issues there. So anything we get out of him would be gravy. I thought his tape was much better than where he went, though. 2
more names to me. Again, we keep asking who's going to be a vertical player for the Seattle Seahawks. Torrey Horton was drafted in the 5th round, so that's not like non-draft capital. It's something there. Ty Felton is going to be a, I think, big play type of player for the Minnesota Vikings if he hits to take the spot of Jalen Nailor. And look, the next tight end, if you've bypassed now 6 of them, yes, 6 of them would be Mitchell Evans to me. I think Mitchell Evans has a chance of being like a true Y tight end in the NFL. And the only person ahead of him really on that depth chart that would fulfill that role is Tommy Tremble on a 1-year contract. Because JT Sanders is more of the movable split flow action tight end.
Agree. I think on Felton real quick, that was like one of the first picks in the 4th round. Like that is like legit draft capital. And we could just say he's going to be attached to Kevin O'Connell for the long term. And like he's an early 4th round pick. Like that's not a terrible profile. I thought that he had some upside on tape and he just needs to catch the ball more reliably. But I did think there's like a little path to upside. So I think that's a good shout.
And final one, Jalen Lane, freak athlete who is going to win on special teams early on, who is dynamic with the ball in his hands. And if he somehow learns how to be like a true route runner and not just a whole bunch of over routes and those types of things, then you have like a specimen at the wide receiver position attached to a really explosive offense. So Jalen Lane is a very intriguing one for me too.
Yeah, he needs to just go watch Diami Brown tape from this last year and just hopefully turn into that in the long run.
And finally, Brashard Smith. Like we have seen Chiefs 6th, 7th round picks turn it around and become their best running back. So there's a whole bunch of names out there. Hopefully leave us in the comments down below your favorite, let's say 4th round targets for your Dynasty Rookie Drafts.
Look how big Haas looks in this picture. Like that looks like a monster. I tried to get sold on him. I watched his receiving stuff, not enough there, but he's going to be on the football field because he'll throw you out the club.
All right. That does it. 1 through 36 Dynasty Rookie Rankings. Again, the rest of the week, it's going to be focused on best ball mania. The puppies are out. Most importantly, go and play. Your hot best ball summer starts now. Use promo code TheShow. Click the link in the description, and we will match in bonus cash your first deposit up to $1,000. Go play right now. We'll talk about it all week long as well. All right. Shout out to you, Weaves. Shout out to you, Hayden. Up the Villa. Talk to y'all soon. See ya.